Our next guest is someone we're sure everyone is looking forward to hearing from. He is the fourth Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Terrance Drew. Good morning, Dr. Drew, and welcome to Good Morning SKN. It's our pleasure to have you today.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me at this most modern studio. 327?
327.
327. Yes.
And I'm happy to see so many young people who are managing and directing a lot of things here.
Yeah.
So I guess 327 represents the new paradigm.
The new paradigm, indeed. As you said yesterday, the youths are not on the menu; they are at the table.
Exactly.
Indeed.
So that is a pleasant surprise.
Indeed. So how has it been transitioning from a normal civilian, to leader of our federation?
Well, as you know, it is a transition that cannot be fully explained. A lot of it has to be experienced to fully understand it.
Okay.
But it's a tremendous type of transition. The responsibility that you are now really leading a country, and of course you have that responsibility of making sure the country does well. Mm-hmm. And even apart from that, the responsibility itself, I think the adjustment to security and privacy and so forth, that is an adjustment in itself. I just can't jump in a vehicle and drive down the road and go into the supermarket and pick up something.
Okay.
I have to make the adjustments, with security. So that has been part of it, which is a part that, is, I think I'm adjusting to it still. Okay. But I have very good security officers, and I think that they are really helping a lot in the transition. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the work, I have a team that our A-team, as we call the team, and they have been tremendous, the members of that team, my other colleagues in cabinet, and that has helped the transition as well. But apart from that, the persons who are in the offices and who are working, they have also contributed to making the transition as smooth as possible. And I think we have had a relatively smooth transition.
Good stuff. Glad to hear.
All right, let's start with your medical practice, doctor, because it's quite a transition, obviously, from medicine to politics. I'm interested in learning why that transition, what was the catalyst for it, and what has your experience been?
Well, I see medicine and politics, I don't see such great difference as people would see. My philosophical approach to medicine is to take care of people. My philosophical approach to politics is to take care of people.
Okay.
So in that sense, philosophically, there's almost no shift in that sense. And when one is a doctor, and I know that you would have heard of STEM and then STEAM to put the arts in. Yes. And I agree that there should be an A in STEM because really the arts are fundamental and important. Because in solving medical issues, it does not come down to just the science, the physical, the biological sciences. You need more than that. You need to understand the person in the context of their society, the psychological makeup, what experience have they been through, the art of extracting that information, getting to know them so they can get to the root of what the health issue is. And to me, that is the same, almost the same as dealing with people, that you have to see them in their totality. And when you do that, you are at a better place of solving the issue. But what I'm saying is that they're very alike.
Very alike.
Okay, so there's almost a scientific approach then to the way that you're dealing with the management of the country.
Right. So it's scientific, but the arts, as I said, in STEAM, the arts is also important. Right? So I see both things being very, very similar.
Okay. Yes. So you came from humble beginning, as you mentioned, being raised by your grandmother.
Yes.
In several media coverages. So how did this inform the values you live by and those you like to share with young people today?
Well, I was raised fundamentally by my maternal grandmother.
Okay.
I think she had a very simple approach. And I think those lessons learned can be taught to anyone. But if they are embodied and one would apply those lessons to his or her life, one would see the positive benefits, such as work for what you want, work hard, dedicate yourself, and take up what you want. Do not steal, give people things, be honest.
Yes.
Treat people how you want to be treated. That was the golden rule, but she always said it, right? And so, and she will speak about selfishness. Don't be selfish. Look out for the people. Yes. Don't take more than you need. I mean, they sound like simple words that you would leave with me.
Yes.
But when you look at them and if you want to study them, you'll realize that they have a tremendous amount of information carried with them, but they have a moral basis as well that can really help to form one's own outlook on life and the way one treats life and deals with life and people. So I would say those are the simple lessons, but they are simple, but they are deep at the same time.
Okay. Were lashes included too? Did you get licks as a
Well, of
boy?
course.
I just needed
But
that.
you'll get some. You'll have to get some now and then.
Okay.
I don't think she was one who liked to beat. But
Okay.
I remember being beaten a couple of times. One, I left a towel on the bed. And she used to say, never leave a towel on the bed. And she came to the school to look. Took me out the school, carried me home, of course, with some legs, and take the towel off the bed. I don't think I ever left a towel on the bed.
No, not after that. Not after that.
That was one. And another time, I think I reached school late.
Ooh.
Yeah, and she came to look. So I couldn't be late for school. And so those are the simple principles I grew up with. But as you grow older and you mature, you realize
understand.
how fundamental
Yes.
those little things are. I saw a soldier give a whole speech on making a bed. I don't know if you ever saw that one. He was a general, and he was giving a commencement message, and it was, make your bed.
Yes.
Something I said, he went into why making your bed makes
Yes.
a difference.
Indeed.
So it's those simple things that really make the big difference.
So in your adult life, have you ever forgotten the towel on the bed?
Well,
Return home and remove
let me
it?
see. Yes.
Okay.
Well, every time I do it, I'm very conscious. And if I do it, I say, no, I have to do it.
That's so funny.
So, that is, I carry that.
Good stuff.
Yes. And punctuality as well. But I would say about punctuality in St. Kitts, it's much more difficult than when I was in the US, for example.
Okay.
Everybody knows everybody. So let's say you say, I got to get here at this time, and you left at a particular time, you're stuck because everybody is your friend, your neighbor, you know people. And so you don't pass your friends and neighbor. When you're in the US and you go and you leave here at this particular time, you go there. The only body in there know you. But I like to be early nonetheless.
All right, Prime Minister, what are some of the first areas of concern in the country that you'd like to impact now that you're Prime Minister? Perhaps things that you had envisioned that you would do once you won office?
Right. So I think when we approached it, apart from the policy changes we made, was children who were dying from possible curable diseases because their parents couldn't afford it. That was one of the significant policy changes we made. As I speak, there is a child now in Barbados who is receiving treatment who would have been delayed as people try to raise money. And many times by the time you raise the money to get the child where the child needs to be, many times it's advanced. And so we will not allow children to go through that. So once the doctors here would have recommended that the child needs to be overseas because they can't handle it here, then we will take it from there. And you have PALS. PALS has been doing an excellent job in terms of helping children. And so they are partners still. But the children are guaranteed to be taken care of. So that to me was one of the first things that we had to do. The other things we are looking at is health insurance, a universal healthcare system. We are classified as a high-income country, yet there are so many persons without health coverage. And that actually leads to worse health outcomes. Because people tend not to go to the doctor. They can't afford it. Their treatment is delayed if they have to go overseas and as an adult, for example, because they can't afford it. And so universal healthcare system, which means access to quality healthcare. That is why we're going to do some revamping in the health sector. Already, we have gone to Poxon, and we have given Poxon 24/7 medical coverage. That means there's always a doctor there. And we are going to do the same thing at Mary Charles. And this is going to result in improved care and improved quality as well. We're going to take some strain off of JNF. So in the health sector, mental health needs to be looked at. And we have committed to building a new structure. And I want people to know this is a smart hospital, meaning climate smart. So we want a hospital that can resist and is resilient so that no matter what happens in hurricanes and so forth, it can stand. You will have a hospital that can still function. We are expecting stronger hurricanes, more frequent hurricanes with climate change. You don't want a situation where your hospital cannot function. And so we want to do that. And so in the health sector, the other thing we want to do is making sure good governance agenda. It is very important. The good governance agenda that has to do with integrity in public life, transparency, and so forth, and anti-corruption. I think it's important that we start to approach it. Start the pathway in earnest, that we start to put the laws in place. And I think what this will do is unleash our people. Why? Because you will be judged on your merit, your talent, as Martin Luther King would have said. Judge people by the content of their character. When you take away corruption, people are judged on merit, the content of their character, hard work, innovation, those kind of things we want to see come to the fore. There are countries that have demonstrated that it could be done, like Singapore, for example. And I think to some extent Rwanda has also demonstrated that. And I think we are very poised as a country where we can do that as well. And so good governance, we talk about food security, very important. COVID taught us that we need to grow more, secure more, right?
Yes.
And so we now have to use the soil, use other modern techniques to really develop the agricultural sector. And we know that the Honorable Samuel Duggins, who himself is a professional farmer, has really pledged to do that. And so he's pushing that forward as well. And so we want food security to be a part of it. But the other thing is that we want what you call a sustainable island state. Sustainable island state is our goal. And that means we want to create a country that can serve itself and that is in a sustainable way. And it is resilient at the same time. And it gives people a chance to grow themselves professionally, to grow wealth as well. It is important, and to pursue their dreams and happiness. So we want to make sure that at the cusp of that would be renewable energy as well. And so we are looking at waste to energy project. For example, the landfill economy. So we convert that into waste to energy, solar energy. We have now the the federations, the federal government is now partnering with the NIA to bring about the renewable energy source, geothermal. That was a matter that had been back and forth, but we have gone in and we've said, look, we need to get this resolved. And the prospect from it looked very, very good. The prospect looks very good in the sense that we'll be able to power St. Kitts and Nevis and export energy. So that in itself, and we're looking at solar energy as well, looking at options of how we're going to do it. So we want renewable energy and to really create a negative carbon footprint as a country and really to demonstrate to the world that it is possible. But we also want to make sure that women and youth have opportunities and real opportunities, and we move as far as possible. The barriers of oppression and suppression. For example, our cabinet has 3 women. It is the first time that a cabinet in our federation has had that. That in itself is a historical thing. And we have also made sure that we include youth on boards and, of course, in parliament and in the cabinet. Our younger senator is around 30 or so. She's a cabinet with a ministerial role. So, and women, you'll see throughout, would have their real opportunities. And so we think that when youth and women are the groups in society that would not have had the opportunity, now getting the opportunity, that again unleash a potential that would lend positively to the advancement and development. So that is very, very critical part of it. So we have been able to achieve youth at the table. And as you said, you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
No, exactly. And you said they're not on the menu, they're at the table.
Right?
Yes.
And we have been able to do that for youth. We have been able to do that for women.
Yes.
And as we lay this new foundation of how we're going to operate, I think people would see the actual tangible benefits from this. And my hope is after I'm gone, after 2 terms, that is my goal, no more than that. And I keep saying it even then to remind myself that I would not go beyond that. That whoever comes after would at least continue.
Prime Minister Drew, shortly after your victory at the recent elections, I noticed that there was a picture on Facebook of you at the park in St. Paul's where you were standing beneath the statue of Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw, and you had your hand raised. You looked like a mini Bradshaw, if I can say that. And as it was circulating, the image that I got was that this was quite an iconic moment because it indicated to me, and I want to know if I'm right, it was symbolic to me because I thought this was you saying to the world that you have very big shoes to fill and you will be doing your best to follow in his footsteps.
Right. So I think when I took the picture, we had been moving around the island. And of course, I stayed there. And I took the opportunity to look at him and to reflect on his life, to reflect on the many sacrifices that he would have made, the way he governed, and the way he set forth in putting St. Kitts in a position to be a progressive modern country where people would be free and have the opportunity to explore their potential. As you know, he was responsible for social security, things we take for granted.
Yes.
Free education, secondary school, and we have just given college free education. He set up the healthcare system as we know it, with clinics around the island, doctors accessible, a nursing program. And he basically started the course towards independence. He's responsible, of course, he and his team for the Deepwater Harbor. So many, the airport, they also built. So the ports, the structure that we see, a lot of it really comes from him, his leadership, and his team. And so as I reflected and I did that, I said, there's always a lot of work to be done. Yes. And here is a beautiful example of somebody who is from St. Kitts and Nevis, somebody who was a leader of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, leader of the labor movement, premier of St. Kitts and Nevis, would have gone to the Federation in the 1960s, where he was the Minister of Finance, had to come back because that failed, but he continued the advancement and development of St. Kitts. But what is also striking about him is that at the end of the day, when they examined his life, I remember speaking to someone who had examined his life, who was very much against him. But when he started to study his life, he recognized, wow, this is a giant among men. And he became one of his ardent supporters, in a sense, followers, admirers. And so that means he lived and governed in a way that when examined centuries, well, at least decades after, people would see the value of what he contributed and also come to know that he was great indeed in delivering for the people. So that is what was on my mind. Those things were on my mind, and those things are the things I reflect on, even in carrying out this tremendous task of leading the country.
Okay. Since we're along those lines and you spoke about his legacy, what do you intend your legacy to be?
Well, I intend my legacy to be good governance. Okay. We're going to push that. Women and youth finally come into the table, to have a modern healthcare system that is a universal system, open up education possibilities for tertiary level education, create a scenario where our people can build businesses and grow wealth, and where our people can actually not be only leaders in St. Kitts and Nevis, but can export their talent, where we can become a country that uses the sun, the wind, the geothermal for energy, and where really we can produce our own food. So I think we can set a path for those things. Okay. And that is what I intend to do, intentionally put those things in place. I'll help to establish the foundation with the team and others who have the same mind, so that we can really get this tremendous task done. So at the end of the day, that is what I would like to leave, so that somebody else can come after me and build on something.
And 2 terms is enough to do that.
To set the foundation.
I don't think so, but we have to.
I'm just picking up on what you said, Prime Minister. All right, so we know it's been only a few months, but we want to ask, is there such a thing as a typical day in the Prime Minister's office?
Well, a typical day is work. Well, I get to work, it depends. I try to be early, but it depends on, because if I get up early, maybe 4:30.
Oh, wow.
That's what I've done basically all my life.
Okay.
I grew up in Upper Monk Hill, St. Peter's. You get up early. We are industrious people, hardworking people. So I get up 4:30, and I would say I take time to read. I read a lot, prayer, meditation, get some exercise in. And I like breakfast. That's my favorite meal of the day.
Oh, nice.
And then I we'll start making calls because I will have a number of formal or mostly informal interactions and meetings, but critical meetings.
Okay.
Start setting the tone for the day. So I'm intentional about it. What is to get done here, there. So by the time I get to the office, I know exactly what is supposed to be done that day. And so that helps tremendously. And I also will send people things, remind us, and tell them, what are we getting, what you should look for the day. I send them early, but they don't have to look at it early. At least when they get to work, they can look at it and say, okay, these are what. And then at the end, they tend to follow up and make sure that that is done. Because that helps for a better organized day, a smooth day, and what you are doing is intentional in terms of achieving the overall goal, which is what I mentioned before. And so we do that. So we get to the office, we work, meetings, calls, talking to people. That is what it's made of, planning. And then you do that at the end of the day. That's how it is. You leave. But during the day, it's work.
I wanted to ask you, is it like being on call 24/7?
Yeah, you're on call 24/7, really. And that is a very good point that you made, because people ask, how do you do it? And I say it's no accident that three of the prime ministers have been doctors.
Yeah.
Somehow they were saying society it lends itself for doctors to have an opportunity to become the leader, to become prime minister. We are very personal, the management of personalities and people, understanding people, keeping cool when everybody else thinks it's a lot of pressure, but you keep cool because you have been fashioned in a way to operate like that. So as it's a call 24/7, so I tell people the hours might be a little less. It's hardly about being prime minister, you'll get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, this is a matter of life and death. But as a doctor, that was very frequent, it's very frequent. And so therefore, that helps you in your preparation to at least deal with the scheduling and the tensions and so forth, and the challenges of being a prime minister. The thing is, though, of course, your decisions affect much more people. Okay. But nonetheless, you have developed a process, an approach, and I think that helps. The approach is very helpful, because I think that is where the crux of the matter in leadership. You are faced with these challenges. How do you approach it?
Yes.
Right? How do you approach it?
Okay. So yesterday we reported on the news that there's a rise in tourism this year.
Yes.
But according to the news and the IMF, next year there's supposed to be a decline. So in your address, you spoke about the way forward. What kind of support and partnering with the IMF are you looking to get to support the people of our federation?
Right. Well, so far, we are not contemplating going into an IMF program.
Okay.
I think that we are going to be resilient enough to avoid that, unless there's something catastrophic beyond what anybody expects. So we are not going to enter into IMF program. Not only that, because we came out of 2 years of the COVID, we were already almost in a recession. Yeah. So anything else that comes is a plus from what we had before. So in the last 2 years, the arrival of tourists was very low. That arrival was low. We expect it to increase. And we expect it to continue to increase over the next few years compared to the previous 2 years. So that is a plus. We're also going to seek to start to diversify our economy and not depend solely or so much on the CBI program. The CBI program cannot be such a fundamental part of our economic structure because it is vulnerable, and that can disappear or it can be hit or can hurt us. But nonetheless, we are moving to strengthen it and allow it to be part of a diversified economic system. So I think that there is a lot of positive prospects for us. So I expect that there might be a recession, and then we're going to come out of the recession. Okay. As I said when I spoke to the IMF, is that countries in the Caribbean, we are vulnerable. We are vulnerable because we have small economies. We are vulnerable because we depend on tourism. We are vulnerable because we depend on a CBI program. And these industries are not indigenous to us. We really depend on other countries for our benefit from these. And that makes us very, very vulnerable. So we are saying to them, you now have to consider us as vulnerable states. But apart from all of that, We are vulnerable to climate change. The fact that you hear me talk about a new hospital or smart hospital, I'm talking about a climate smart hospital. But it should not only be a hospital, our whole infrastructure has to now become climate change.
Yes.
That requires tremendous investment. And if we are going to make that investment to make us resilient and be able to deal with climate change and to at least remove the existential threat of severe hurricanes and storms and so forth, we need financing. And what I said to the IMF is that you just cannot look at our GDP, but look at our vulnerability. Yeah. And so that would give us access to concessionary loans and grants. We don't have access to grants. We don't have access to concessionary loans. When we take a loan, it is a high interest rate because they say we have graduated and we are a high income country. But what we are saying, we can be high income today, we get a storm tomorrow, and we are totally affected. Yeah. America is different. This storm passes through Florida, which is a small part of the whole of the United States of America. But if that same storm were to pass the St. Kitts, it's the whole of St. Kitts. Yes, it's affecting. And as a result, we are much more vulnerable. And our vulnerability must be calculated when you consider whether we should have access to grants or concessionary loans. But nonetheless, we are going to do what we can do, partnering with the region and the international community to make us as resilient as possible.